Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Now this is of course my spoiler-free review, so if you guys want to skip right over this to go straight to the spoiler section, there'll be a link in the description for that as soon as that video gets uploaded. But to go right into this, I thought it was a great movie. Like, I had a really good time with this one. It's, I think, the 8th or 9th movie technically. If we're putting, all the Harry Potter films together, it's the 9th film in the franchise. It's going to become its own 5-part franchise. I don't even know what to call it. Once it gets past like 4, like, I know that would be a quartet, unless you add quartilogy. I don't know, but it's going to be 5 whole movies, and I think this is a fun start. And I'm curious how they're going to do it, because it's clear that this started off because Fantastic Beasts is more of a, it's like an actual guide. It's not its own story. It's more like this is an actual book, of course, within Harry Potter. And so this is the screenplay of the book, and it tells the story of the guy who actually made the book. So it's very interesting. Like, it's named, of course, after the book, and it's really the story that predates the book, like how the book even came into existence. So it's very interesting how it's starting off, and I'm curious how they're going to go along with it, because with the time frame that they're in, I'm interested to see how far things go along, because they're in the 20s, and there's some references and stuff thrown into this film, and they mentioned some characters that, of course, are going to have some really big roles to play within the Harry Potter universe, but I would assume also, the Fantastic Beasts film series as well. So I like how they did the introduction, some of the references. There's visual stuff in there that you can see. There's one part, I kind of don't want to even give it away. I'll do that in like my spoiler thing. But there's some visual things that have shown up in movies before. It's like, oh, they didn't make a point to focus on it, but if you saw it for like that half a second that it was on the scene, it's like, hey, that's that thing that I know. So I love that they did that. There are some references to other characters, name-wise as well. So that's really cool. Some we get to see in this film, some we don't. Some we'll get to see later on, which some of you guys might know if you saw the news. But I liked it. I didn't think it had really any bad beats to it. I actually thought the pacing was really good for this movie, and I thought it had like a nice change of pace as well, because it starts off, it's very comedic. Like, it's like the very opening scene is fairly dark, and it's just like, it's almost like the later films in the Harry Potter stuff where it's like, dang, it just started off super dark, and then it was like, that's just kind of an introduction to some weird stuff. And then it goes into like the kind of, up part of the film where it's like, it's funny and it's happy, and then it goes back to the darker side of things, and it gets crazy in this one, and it's very interesting, and it's got some emotional stuff for sure in this film, especially getting to the end of it. But I just like the way it all played out. I thought the characters were well acted. The visuals were great. I love the 1920s style, and they were jumping all over the place in this, which is one of my favorite things. I just love the visuals for when they like apparate and stuff like that. So I thought that was really cool. So I was happy to see that they're jumping all over the place. They're using, of course, some spells that, if you watch the Harry Potter films, you notice there are certain spells where it's like, oh, they did like these cool kitty things in the beginning because they had to open this up or do that, and then later on everybody kept dying, so it's like, we aren't opening chests up anymore, we aren't using those little kitty spells. So it was really cool to see that come back, where it's like, oh, these are spells from like the first 2 movies before things got like insanely dark, in the Harry Potter franchise, and it's like, oh, that's cool, they bring back certain spells and stuff like that. So I enjoy just, hearing those spells, and they use some spells, from kind of both halves of the original series. So I thought that was really cool. It's like, alright, here's the more mature stuff, and then here's some of the, simpler stuff. It's still very big situations, but, I thought it was cool that they brought back some of the older spells that they kind of let go of in, like, at least the movie version of, the Harry Potter films. It's like, we don't have time for unlocking doors anymore. We gotta, fight back and not die. So I thought that was really cool. The beasts themselves, of course, were very entertaining. Just a multitude of things, which I thought was really cool. Like, I'm not familiar with Fantastic Beasts. I didn't even know it existed, to be totally honest, until the movie was announced, because I'm not like that into Harry Potter. I really only like the films, and I know a lot about the books. I just never read the books. So like, I know a lot about like the differences and stuff like that just because I watch a bunch of videos about that. So I do know a lot of the actual world and all sorts of random things, but I never really read the books, so I didn't really know much about this. And then, going into it, it's like, this is really cool. Like, I did always want to know more about the creatures, because that was something that, from like the little bit I did read of the first Harry Potter book, I like that idea. I was like, oh, that's cool. They touched, on dragons that are touched on way more in the first book than, the first film. They kind of don't even bother with it, to be honest. It's like, it's a glimpse, but that's really it. So it was cool that they brought that in. It's set in America, so we get, the fact that, they even reference the, I want to say it's Ilvermorny. I really don't know. I didn't know that existed either until like literally last week. That's how little I know. But they actually mentioned that in the film. It's American, magicians and stuff like that, wizards and stuff. So I was like, that's really cool. They don't use the term Muggle. Honestly, I was a little upset by that. I was like, man, that sounds way cooler than like, I think they use the term like non-magi or something. It's basically non-magic, and I was like, it's just two words shortened, and that's really it. And I was like, I think Muggle is just cooler because it's literally its own word. So then, they mentioned, and that was another thing I like. They mentioned the references like, oh, well, we say this or do this, and you guys in the States do this. So I was like, that's actually awesome. I like those differences, and that's another thing I'm really excited for because it was interesting going into this film, even watching the trailers. It's like, oh man, they have actors that are super familiar to me because they have like people like Colin Farrell and stuff like that, and it's because it's set in America, so they have American actors compared to, of course, the original films where they were famous British actors, which I happen to know most of those people because I watch a bunch of British TV, so I happen to know a lot of those people when I saw them, or at least recognize them if I don't know them by name. But it was pretty cool. I was like, that's very interesting. It was kind of weird because it's like, I actually know a lot of these people, so it's weird. It's almost like Star Wars, where it's like I see someone I actually know as a famous actor in Star Wars. It's like, that's actually kind of weird to me because I'm not used to that, in Harry Potter. It's like, oh, I know this person or I recognize that person, but it's not like I can be like, I know that person from this movie and I know them by name and I have known them by name for like a decade or so. So it was actually kind of weird seeing that, but it was really, really good. Like, I really loved the acting in this. I thought the comedy was great. And I like I said, how it kind of branches off. Like, it starts off really happy and fun, and then it gets into that dark stuff for like the second half. And I loved it. I was like, man, this is really good. And I liked the way they did it. I thought the ending was pretty entertaining, and the visuals I thought looked great. But, the way it ended, I wasn't super happy with it. It was actually kind of, it seemed like there wasn't as much of a resolution as I would have liked. To be totally honest, like it looked great. Like, it was definitely visually a stunning ending. I guess, like, battle sequence of the the climax, but I did feel like there was a little bit missing, and that mostly comes from the fact that I guess it wasn't that it was missing anything. It was more like it was like anticlimactic a little bit, just because it seemed to end in such a quick manner. It was like, it seemed like it was really building up to the very end of it, and then it's like they get to that point where it's almost like something, like it's either one or the other, but there didn't seem like that in-between moment where you get to see how everybody's thinking. It's just like, all right, it happened. One of the things happened, and then it's over, and it's like, oh, I thought there was going to be like a extra little bit in there where it's just like, this is why this is about to happen, and that's all there is to it. Like the kind of the feeling behind the ultimate decision at the end of the film. It's like, oh, at least with the main villain and stuff. It's like, oh, that's I felt it was somewhat missing because it just happened. But at the same time, I was like, I kind of like that. I just felt like it was getting to a point where they were doing something with it, and then they only did it for like this much compared to what I was expecting to see, and then it was over, and I was like, oh well. Still loved it, but it was kind of, it was just kind of quicker than I thought it was going to be in like that very last moment. And also it was just sad in general. Just the whole ending, like the last, not the whole ending, I shouldn't say that, but after like the big battle is kind of sad. The ending to that is a little bit sad to me. And then right after that, it was like super sad. I was like, man, this is like crazy emotion I wasn't expecting for this movie. So I love that. And then, the way they ultimately ended, I thought was really well done too. But I thought it was a great movie. I'm super excited to see them go into these sequels. I believe the second one is supposed to be like late 2018 or something like that. So we got 2 years before the second one comes out. But love this movie. I thought it was really good. I like the visuals. I like the style. I feel like we got to see new types of magic, which is always really fun. And plus, seeing the beasts themselves is almost a new form of magic. We get to see what they can or can't do, and they introduce things that I'd never known about, and it's like, this is just really freaking sweet. Like, this is cool to see this new side of the wizarding world, and plus we literally get to see it on a different, in a different side of the planet, in a totally different time period as well, because it's of course in the 1920s. So I love the way that this movie started out, and it seems like it's going to be a good start to a very entertaining franchise. So I'm excited to go into it. Going through it, I like the design and stuff. Like I said, the 1920s style, and you have people dressed up in suits. Like, the whole movie, everybody's just dressed fancy because it's the 1920s. So I always kind of like that. It's like, that just looks cool. Everybody's either in a suit or in a nice jacket or something. Eddie Redmayne is new. Like, his jacket, I love. I don't know why. I like blue. Blue is my favorite color. So I was like, man, I kind of want that jacket. It just looks, it's a nice blue. So going through, I was like, that's a sweet jacket. I would love to buy that. But it was a good movie. I really enjoyed it. Of course, if you're a Harry Potter fan, you've probably already seen it. And if not, you gotta go see it because it's good. You either, especially if you're a hardcore fan, it's perfect for hardcore fans. And I'm not even a hardcore fan. I just love, like, the movies and enough to at least see the differences, between what happened in the films and the books. And I loved it. I was like, oh, I recognize this. I know a little bit about that. And so they, through this here, through that there, that's visually, that shows up for like a half a second or something. And I loved it. It was a really fun movie. Like I said, the comedy was good. The emotional parts were good. They even have a little, like a romance in there, which I thought was, really nice. And it was well done. I would say personally, I think it's probably one of my favorite sort of, like single film sort of story things. Just the way they do it, just in one film, I thought was really well done. So I liked everything about this, to be totally honest. Like, that tiny little thing, as far as the ending fight, not that bad to me. And plus, it was a visual spectacle, so maybe I'm a sucker for that, because, really when it focused on the beast, it's like, oh, that's really cool, and you get to see the creatures and stuff. But the ending just kind of goes nuts. And for some people, it might bother you because we've had like a really weird trend with any, if it's like any sort of super type of fiction stuff, whether it's like superhero movies or whatever, it's been this really weird trend of a certain visual thing that happens in the final moments that I'm sure will bother some people. But as far as I'm concerned, I was like, you know what, I didn't see it as, it wasn't, the typical thing for me. I don't want to get into what it is, because if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about if you've been watching a lot of like big blockbuster movies lately. But I still thought it was really well done, and I am curious to see how they kind of go about continuing the franchise, because one of the big things that they do after the main battle is kind of set things in an interesting way, and it's like, alright, where could this go, or is it just going to be, what it always has been, which it probably will, which is the only unfortunate thing. But depending on where they go with this series, they could really get into some depth. So I'm excited to see where it goes, but really love the movie. Highly recommend you see it if you haven't seen it already. But do want to know what you guys thought about it, of course, without spoilers. I would love to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below, let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. Of course, if you prefer to just wait and not bother with spoiler tags or any of that, you can just hop over to the spoiler video. And of course, I'm going to go into more detail about what I really enjoyed, because I like to keep it super vague. I try not to give anything away in these, like, at all. But really good movie, of course. Like I said, though, want to know what you guys think about it. And of course, thanks for watching.